I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight and say some thank yous. We really have had a wonderful run of the Superior Poetry Cafe. Susan, how long have we been going with this now?
I think since 2007.
2007. So it's been a really good run. I'd like to thank Frank Blisset for coming to be our featured poet tonight. He's been with us since the very first time. Friends of the library for the wonderful refreshments. Thank you very much. You guys just do a great job. And please help yourself, everyone. Yes. Help yourselves to the refreshments. The library's program committee, thank you guys very much for putting everything together. They do a great job of doing that. Upcoming events, our next Superior Poetry Cafe doesn't have a date yet because we expect it to be in January. We're planning to host UP Poet Laureate Russell Thornburn from Marquette, and we're trying to nail down the date with him. I want to bring your attention to the Superior Poetry Cafe chapbook. They're right over here. They're $7 each. Please consider buying one. We have a few left. If you really want one, we might even give you 10% off if you're nice to us.
I'm in that one.
You are, Frank. He is. And you wouldn't think it because it's so thin, but he's right in there. So Frank Blisset came to the Sioux from Lower Michigan in 1992 to study biology at Lake State University. He's written poetry since high school and has an extensive collection of it yet to be published. 2 of his poems were published in 2009. Frank's been a regular open mic participant since the beginning of the Superior Poetry Cafe in 2007. If I had read this, Susan, I would have known it, right? He's also performed at Pickford Community Library and is a regular at the Sioux Summer Arts Festivals. He's also been active in the creative endeavors and the story spinners groups that meet here in the library. And if you don't come to those, both of those are very good activities to join up with. Frank's been a vendor at the Sioux Farmers Market since 2004, and he's working to expand into a full-fledged farm. After his reading, we'll take a short break before our open mic, and there's a sign-up sheet right there in the back, so please sign up to join us, and please help me welcome Frank Blisset.
Up here in the wilds above the bridge, just last month in the old folks' home, a wrinkled woman celebrated 110 years, and the paper promised a reporter would come. The young cub stringer hid his nerves as he politely snuck in the door, and he politely asked where the party was held, and he politely slunk across the floor. He found the festivities quick enough and sat beside a young nurse who told him the woman was still in good health, as spry as an 80-year-old. He learned that this woman was an old maid and had never been sick in her life, that she whiled away hours tatting fake flowers or tooting on an old fife. The cake was cut, and some cheese was too, and vintage wine was poured, and a great-grandnephew gave a grand speech that lasted for just a few words. Then the reporter came forward and stammered through nervous fear. Is it true? You've never, he asked, been sick in your 110 years? You'll have to speak up, Sonny, she replied, and then sat deathly still. So he cleared his throat and let loose with, I hear you've never been ill. What? Plus the stern look upon her face turned the boy's stomach to wood. But he pushed on and cried, Have you ever been bedridden? As loud as he could. A puzzled look crossed her face. Oh, my, yes. Hundreds of times it seems. And after a moment's more hesitation, and once in a buggy, she beamed. That was my adaptation of an old Minnie Pearl sketch. Not typical of the types of poems I write, but I wanted to start out with that. And we're going to be doing an experiment. I found the other day at a yard sale a $1 felt hat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. Great for my straw hat. I've been in a very seasonal, cyclical mood, so I'm actually going to spend most, if not all, of my time going through the seasons here. And we're going to start with one. This came from a dream from the end of summer. We had a German Shepherd dog, a giant German Shepherd dog named Ranger. And I had a dream that he was up in a tree. I woke up and right in the middle of that dream, and I thought, boy, you know, he's clumsy enough. If he was up in that tree, he wouldn't be up there long. This is fall into summer. This is the story of Ranger, the tree-climbing, long-haired German Shepherd dog who liked to lounge warm days away high above the ground. A gnarled oak, bent by storm when young and still supple, was easy egress from the land into the sky he loved. With green, green summer somewhere below, and the blue of life all around, the world was soon a forgotten realm as Ranger rose to dream. No longer to recall running past pain after a van that sped down the road, nor any thoughts of those long gone times with the confusion and questions they left. Peaceful dream flowed to dream, like gentle breeze that tickles the ear of a dog, and joy found its way with sudden kick clear through the dreamer's fog. One can imagine the surprise of the Girl Scout who, hearing a sudden thump, turned round to see the shaggy head of a giant German Shepherd dog. Or imagine suddenly seeing green all around where once all had been blue, and being greeted with a cookie from the hand of a dumbfounded angel. This next one, I think it was last fall, if not the fall before. We had construction on 129, had to take a detour around, and driving down the detour, I saw a woman just walking down the street, and I happened to have a CD of swing music in the CD player, and she was in perfect time to Artie Shaw. Up the road, silhouetted by a gray fall day, a woman was walking, hips swaying, right arm bouncing to Waterfront by Artie Shaw. Only a dozen beats before I turned north on Shunk, and a score more before the next song. My thoughts were of you when I saw her swaying, your hips swinging in time to a jazz clarinet, your cat's tail twitching to a dream. And across the road from us, actually I just heard on the radio the other day that the Mackinac Island horses are leaving the island to go to their winter pastures, one of which is across from us. And a few summers ago, I was out tramping around in one of their ravines, found a horse skull. And that was the start of this poem. The moss mostly hides what leaves cannot, brown and skeletal beneath the cottonwood and hemlock where the horses tramped single file to the Sometimes Creek, through cinnamon fern quivering beside the hoof falls that rise, the moss slowly rebounding. Their herd can rumble the pasture above in the 4-month break between work and work, when colts buck and fall and bite beneath cotton white clouded blue, where eagle and vulture look down on the dancing cranes ululating between life and life. The feathers left behind will blow and buff against the browning pasture grass till the cottonwood copse catches them and holds them in its green after the horses are gone, save for a few scattered traces down by the Sometimes Creek. Yeah, but it's interesting to see all those horses coming and going, and they do seem to like the coming. They don't so much like the going back to work, though. This next poem, just various images from fall and winter over the years. And it starts out, I have quite a vivid memory of them playing Agnes Day on the radio in memory of the JFK shooting. And this is driving with my wife. Telephone poles sweep past in heartbeat slow rhythm while my wife dozes in the passenger seat. Agnes Day on the radio. Ahead, November's low sun struggles to remember. Cold white bright on cloud white skies, promise of snow white cold to come someday soon. It brings to mind a winter day, not far from here, when snowdrifts rippled in memory of tropical seas, or a Sweetwater Sea for that matter, with secrets stowed 500 feet below steel gray water. And there we were, that winter morn, demasted, so to speak, gas line ripped on waves of snow. Fellow schooners passed from time to time along those waves of white, with greetings hailed and gracefully declined, while we waited and sighed and watched snow machines bound over icy furrows, and waited for the tow truck to take us into town. Later that day, roads still unplowed, dropped off as close to home as friends dared drive. We walked hand in hand under spruce boughs bowed with snow. The snow came slow this year, and the path to our drive is tramped to grit and grass. The drive is still white, save for the brown where your car should be. I am alone this Christmas for the first time, but I am not saddened. How can heavy hearts hang in a house where summer days are spent listening to the poplar leaves quake while winter nights are wrapped in an old Afghan? But you spent last night in a drafty spare bedroom of my family's ancestral farmhouse, waking to coffee with my mother. I woke to hungry cats. And on this Christmas day, I am wrapped in memories of the fawn I flushed behind the chicken coop one spring, the 50-year flood that lifted the footbridge to our stream, walking home with you under snowy spruce boughs. Though I do miss you, my heart flies with you. My thoughts are ever on you, traveling the black top byways between my family and your family this winter day. And a few years back, this is kind of sort of real. I did find a raven one winter, injured, and took it home, and this is actually bits and pieces from a couple of attempts to save critters. Black on white, fluttering across the snow of a vacant lot in earliest spring. A raven, panicked and panting, left wing trailing alongside while my traffic light changed. I returned later and followed the sound of mobbing crows to an old woodpile where the raven had found a little shelter. It bumped and bumped against the cordwood as I grabbed its neck and pulled it to my chest. At home, we wrapped the wing, feathers dulled and frayed, with white tape, slid it into a cat carrier, and left a little tin of dog food. That evening, we listened to the tap, tap, tap while we ate our own supper. 2 days later, it was dead. Thick black bill still shining, quarter covered with forward-facing feathers in front of still eyes. It felt smaller, I suppose, and I pulled it to me without resistance. I gave it its own air burial atop the brush pile among the cedars, where the fox would be sure to find it, and left as the snow fell, white on black. And here's an old one. Another poem mentioning the horses next door. And I know this is a favorite of a couple of the people here, so I figured I had to include this one, if anything. This is Winter Robin. Push, lift, throw. The rhythm repeated for an hour as the drive is slowly cleared of snow. Across the road, fjords frolic in winter sabbatical, free of harness, whip, and goad, free of toil, till spring brings back the big trucks and it's off to work they go. Free for now to bite at mane and push at flank and prance through new-blown snow, and while they prance, the chickadees call from their bare hedgerow and flitter about and rail and rout in their own staccato dance. But they aren't the only feathered find on this warm winter's day, for in the apple tree a robin sits, oblivious to my wondering eyes. The apple buds are tight and brown and shiny yellow beneath, with a core of spring and a soul, with a core of green and a soul of spring wrapped in that golden sheath. Stuck in the deep snowbank, the shovel sits at rest, and welcome cool seeps through and through an unbuttoned quilted vest. Though the robin's song is months long gone, still it chips and pips, a reminder that the green can come, even in winter's grip. After the storm had passed, on an icy apple limb, a lone robin spoke, with chirps that were dashes, punctuating the melody of an old-time hymn. Thank you. Here's one of my more recent ones. This, I guess, would come more from memories of my grandfather downstate. Was a dairy farmer for a while, until the kids went to college. And then he decided that wasn't so much fun. But just memories of hearing about having to walk across the road in the snow to go and milk the cows and stuff. And this is Snow is Soon Forgot. The night stars still stand high, with winter dawn to come, and moonshine falling low over footprints tramping to the barn. But Snow is soon forgot, as steaming hulks of Holstein bump the gates and stanchions and bear their heavy load to him. They wait and grunt for calloused hands to take the yellowed pressure and leave behind last fall's last grass grown dusty through the winter. And fall's last cobwebs, gossamer in the window, gather up the bits of breath the bull snorts through his corral, and he too is fed when all is done. Then the door is opened once again, releasing dust and bits of breath to the coming morning sun. The footprints leading to the barn, now drifted o'er with snow, will be tramped over on the way back. But Snow is soon forgot. And a few months ago, I don't remember exactly when, but we had a featured poet up here. Oh, there it is, Jonathan Johnson. And this was a poem I wrote. Actually, he was reading from a novel, I think, wasn't he? Yeah. But at any rate, just from the various bits and pieces that he read, I came up with this. And this is 3 parts. Would be beginning of winter, end of winter, or beginning of winter, winter, and beginning of spring. The bridge is sleepless too, blinking and stubbled with the first real winter ice. The northern lights are gone. The dawn won't sniff through the drifts for 4 more hours. Time here is as abundant as water draining through the locks, draining through the riverhead and Whitefish Bay and the big lake, drawing from the depths, circling home. And I wonder, how cold is that final? The icebreakers, bruised black along the bow, are ready to sleep again. And the snow is black too now along the road, stubbled with stones kicked up by the plows. At dawn, the transformer hums. I hesitate to step into the car and turn the key, and instead let the electric sing a moment longer in its solitary. 6 months she's been gone this solstice afternoon, and the day, bright, smells like sawdust, stubble dropping from the new and swept out the door. For a moment, the street is quiet, waiting for the next wave. Across the blacktop, the park bench is still empty, but ready. And let's see here. We've got another Raven poem. I've actually got a few Raven poems, but only a couple of them are really worth anything, so.
Edgar would be proud.
And this one, in my new property, there is an old pole barn and there is a giant raven's nest in it. So this is Black in the Barn. 2 years ago, March thaw, anxious to unwrap the rototiller, I broke the drift affront the old pole barn. Black streaked past the broken door into the gray winter day with a raven caw and crew of warning. Click, click, click in the rafters, so I peered inside. 20 feet up, a scraggle of branches balanced on the crossing beams, and another big black bird watched. I backtracked slowly and left them to their work. Their stay with us will be transient. 5 years, 10 years, maybe. Like all living things, they take their stretch in the morning, and retreat to the old barn at dusk, while the barn leans a little more each year. Oh, and this one actually, how many, I don't know, most of you here have been to an M.L. Liebler performance. And he also does workshops quite often. This came from one of his workshops a couple of years back. Just 2 weeks past the last frost when spring's first green was gold, and we are finally in the final green of dirt, road, gravel, and deer flies' eyes shining green. 2 days of rain and the poplar branches are heavy against the roof, swishing the rhythm alpha, beta, gamma, delta, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Or Coleridge rhythms rust creaked and reflecting creaking to life. Or Sandberg, I am the grass, let me work. As the grass works and grows knee-high green. Neither yesterday, anger, nor fear, tomorrow, have a place today. And the best way to finish a poem is to stop. So I was doing my best for Robert Frost and Carl Sandburg there. So. Let's see here. And this one, I don't know how many hikers we have here, but I know that many of you encountered abundant ticks this spring. I know I did. At dusk, the thrush fed on your second-hand blood. The sky ahead purple with a falling red bullseye like circles surrounding a tick bite on sunburnished skin, hidden behind, under. And months earlier, hidden under the hollow bristles of the white-tailed doe who birthed fawns in the marsh behind the apple copse. And before that, behind the ear of a whitefoot field mouse, sleeping. Each cycle reaching back, smaller, simpler, till once past just a speck of egg. And before that even, last year, 2 gamete halves. A series of blood meals, each a step toward tonight, with the stars spinning and the moon spinning, till night, intact, finds itself buffed bronze by the thrush's song. Now, in front of my house in town is a giant patch of blackberries. I actually found them originally down at Ashman Bay. Unfortunately, most every hiker and dog walker and ORV person also has found them over the years. So one spring I said, you know what? I'm going to make my own blackberry patch. And I did, and it's been producing ever since. And the only problem I've ever had is I've only got stung once. Yeah. And I've gotten good at crawling in and around those big thorn canes. This is blackberries. The blackberry primocanes, first year flung from reaching rhizomes, have big, gaudy, beautifully gaudy leaves. Next year they are reborn, small leaves on hard canes. For a brief bit of June they shine white with sprays of 5-rayed flowers. 2 months later, hornets swarm the fermenting flesh and follow a meandering line back home. The new queens will be born, leaving the nest to the elements. It will slough off in bits and pieces, disintegrating and sliding to the snow. The next spring, it will fade into the soil, from which new blackberry canes rise, while the old prepare their slide. They have been reborn to die. And this next one comes from our most recent M.L. Liebler workshop. It'd be nice if I knew my alphabet. There it is. And basically the idea was he wanted us to present a memory, but also to include in that presentation of the memory what we didn't remember. And so this is Unlearned, a poem in 4 parts actually. I don't remember who was there exactly. The Matheny's were, all of them I think. My parents were too, and my sister I think. I think they were there maybe. I know 2 Mormon missionaries were. one with a big wad of gunpowder, and my favorite softball, my orange softball that we should see as it goes up. A big boom from the pipe, and we couldn't see much beyond a blur. A few minutes later, I found a neat circular pile of cotton on the road. Not 200 feet down the road, years later, I was on the hood of an old CJ Jeep, Shane and Angie inside. We were getting close to home, so I stepped down to the running board to swing in. But there weren't running boards on that old CJ Jeep. I don't recall slipping from the hood, nor getting up and walking to the house. I do remember, though, running fast for a few seconds, with the slope down our woods to my right and the road feeling like clouds beneath me. Was that the same summer we wrecked the Jeep? Shane wanted to show how much fun it was to fishtail over ripple boards. I'll admit it was fun, the Jeep tumbling back to front, and there wasn't anything to be done about it anyway. A moment later, my mother appeared from nowhere. For all this, I can't remember the sounds. Was the radio on? Did the turf rip? Did things settle? What did my mother say? What did she want to say? All that was long after I had looked up from my seat below a big plantation pine and wondered. The age-pruned nubs of old branches were just far enough apart I could reach, hold close to the trunk, and just climb. Climb till I was above all the scrubby scrub, felt the summer breeze, and fought the urge to come to my senses. I do have one more seasonal poem, and this is actually a brand new one. New as of, well, I guess it kind of new as of yesterday and a little bit today, so we'll see what comes of it. But I know you're in the Coast Guard, right?
Yes.
Yep. So you've seen lots of mayflies out there.
Oh, all over the time.
Have you ever wondered why they call them mayflies in August?
There's a lot of things I don't know about this town yet.
I've got the answer right here.
Well, sometimes they may fly.
This August morn, well before dawn, 1 million came of age among the muddy reeds along the big river and along the streams too, behind backyards cloaked with St. Mary's fog. And the front yards with cat-tracked dewy grass haloed with sodium yellow street lamp light become curb, then pavement, above which the row of trees catch imagios by the hundreds. Before fog lifts, they will be spent, then brushed aside by morning breeze and gathered together in piles beside the lamp poles. Their spawn will hatch this summer, mostly, and some will survive through fall and winter and possibly spring. Then, next summer, a scant million may fly. I came up with that idea a long time ago, and it took me up until having a deadline to get it done. I'll go back to actually one of my earlier poems. I guess this one is kind of seasonal too. It's more of all seasonal. This is All That Remains. 20 acres of land to pour to plow, rocky beneath and above, is all that remains of familiar names and the dirt road farms that I loved. Across the road, an overgrown field once held foals in the spring, and another half mile where life was more wild, coal black ravens take wing. The plantation pines, a half mile off, were seedlings a lifetime ago, when country boys with familiar names planted them by hand and with hoe. Those seedlings grew fast, spreading seeds far. Now strangers claim names I once knew, but they rarely come, and never for me, and just for a minute or two. They come and they go, from spring's last snow till fall falls fast on the breeze, and all in all, from fall to fall, all I have are the trees. Just winter wind blown, snow white waves surrounding an island of pine, and through the summer the green grass grows surrounding this island of mine. For my next one, I'm actually going to dip into a classic old poem. I'm going to introduce a very short poem of mine by a kind of short poem of Tennyson. Oh, let's see if I can find it here. There it is, The Flower by Alfred Tennyson. Once in a golden hour I cast to earth a seed. Up there came a flower. The people said, a weed. To and fro they went through my garden bower, and muttering discontent cursed me and my flower. Then it grew so tall it wore a crown of light. But thieves from o'er the wall stole the seed by night. So did far and wide by every town and tower, till all the people cried, splendid is the flower. Read my little fable, he that runs may read. Most can raise the flowers now, for all have got the seed. And some are pretty enough, and some are poor indeed. And now, again, the people call it but a weed. And that was kind of the inspiration, so to speak, behind this next poem. And this came from Nikki Haley, I think, from her workshop. No, it was a workshop before that, because she was running late, so they did a quick workshop. And basically, we were given a note card, a postcard. That's what I was looking for. And mine had Wildflowers of Michigan. And between that and memories of that poem and having the garden I do, here is the garden. Burdock, Joe Pye, goldenrod. My garden may not look like much from the road, driving by on the way to some important consideration, but it has its own importance, looked at askew through the facet of a rainbow. Okay, let's see here. And this next one is for Jim. You're a big Yankees fan, aren't you?
A Yankees fan?
Who has?
Oh.
This is a poem about Yogi Berra. He probably stopped a lot of your favorite team's players. Didn't
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Roger Maris, Yogi.
Yeah.
Mickey Mantle.
Well, what the inspiration behind this poem is, don't know how many of you out there remember seeing that Yogi Berra caught the first perfect World Series game, Don Larson. And there are abundant pictures, you can look them up, of Yogi Berra jumping into his arms. And it's just a very joyous picture. And this is being congratulated by Yogi Berra. Stocky back built of the great American myth, hunched and wildly swinging with intentional or unintentional wisdom. Then squat cougar low, the thwap of string wound round till leather hard on soft leather, white on brown leather, stitches spinning, stee. Stocky 8, cougar high, pouncing black and white, first and only, forever and ever, amen. My, how time flies, going, gone, 56, 65, 60, 06, stitches spinning, stee. It's over, save for the drying ink of 1,001 aphorisms heard year to year, shore to shore. 1,001 cast-off proverbs, all from the same young lips turned old. Well, that's not entirely true. I never said half the things I really said. Half the things I really said. The unintentional or intentional poetry of a baseball boy. Oh yeah, room for a few more here. This next one came from, I'm friends with Marcia Ewing, who is friends with Yoko Ono and is a very big John Lennon fan. And, went the wrong way. And she commented once about the irony of being in the casino and hearing John Lennon's Cold Turkey on the speakers. So this is Cold Turkey, and I'll do my best John Lennon, but I'm nowhere near as good as him. Temperature's rising! I stopped short between the rows of nickel machines. Fever is high! And remember the fever of a life, interesting, lived. I wish I was dead! In a street or on a bed, lived. And I tried to follow suit, try still to live. Though not as loud as once I could, when the whole world seemed rolling in pain. 30, 40 years since, the world has moved from fix to fix and wound up here, 2011. A little casino playing oldies through tiny black speakers. As Lennon moaned and groaned his pain, Tipsy the lucky hippo squealed her delight. His guitar faded into the tinkling clinking of the slots. I've been known to idle an evening too, turning 20s into buckets of quarters. But there was a time all I wanted was a hippie in a bag. And I've got room for a couple more here. I'm going to do a few poems, or two actually. A two-parter and then a one-parter. Many years ago, I had got my car stuck in the Rudyard mud.
Oh, that's easy.
Yes, oh, isn't it?
Been there, done that.
And actually, the tow truck driver was very hesitant about getting me out, but he did. And actually, we ended up having to. I walked out, and he drove me back in, and we drove by the church, and I thought, boy, that church is awfully busy for a Friday. He said, it's Good Friday today.
Oh.
So I decided to look up a little history. I wanted to make a poem out of that, but I didn't. I looked up the history of Rudyard, and I found a book on basically the old folks who had settled Rudyard telling their stories. And here's the first settler in two parts. 7 generations past, that tract between the settlements of St. Ignace and the Sioux was vast and unclaimed, untraveled even by the Chippewa. The wolf, the bear, the lynx, the deer, the fox freely roamed the dense cedar swamps spreading from the Pine River where the muskrat built his lodge and the beaver her dam, and where the mallard and the bittern fed upon the wild rice that grew along its banks. And here, when the two towns were linked up by a blaze trail along which the mails were carried each week, the couriers rested and watered horses at the river where the wild rice grew and the tamarack grew and the bittern and the mallard fed. This halfway stopping place, this muddy tract of land wild beside the river, this unbuilt town was named and platted and soon saw men who stayed. The first to come to stay in 1876 was Boy in Blue Judson Smith, who built a sawmill and a blacksmith shop and a 3-storied frame house on the east bank of the Pine. He was a tall man of soldierly build, with dark hair and goatee beard streaked with gray, and one spring his little girl, 6 years old, took ill. Knee-deep in Rudyard clay, he tramped the Mackinac Trail to St. Ignace, tramped the whole distance without stop, saved his little girl, tramped back.
Oh my goodness.
And for those of you who know Rudyard clay, you know what an accomplishment that is. Yeah, this is another poem I got from that book. Basically, the poems almost just wrote themselves from this book. I mean, it was really easy. This is The Sick Eagle. We came from County Tucker Smith, Canada, in the year of our Lord, 1887. Like the rest now long settled, we cleared the land, erected a house. June 1897, Brother Robert was walking along the river, saw a sturgeon on a sandbar in shallow water, shot it with his rifle. The fish weighed a little over 70 pounds. On another occasion, Father was floating downriver, saw an eagle on the shore, sick, struck it with his paddle. It measured 7 feet wingtip to wingtip. And I've got one more, and I do have to apologize beforehand. I have been looking high and low for an accompanist to help me with this one. But unfortunately, nobody under 40 or 50 has ever even heard of the Wabash Cannonball. So I'll have to sing the verses a cappella and do my poetry stuff in here too. So we'll see what we can do. From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, from the green New Hampshire mountains to the Southland's Cajun lore, she's mighty tall and handsome and loved quite well by all. She's a combination known as the Wabash Cannonball. Listen to the rhythm, the rumble and the roar, the click, clack, click, clack of steel on steel bumping from, to, from, in grinding heartbeat grown rusty upon the earth. Your eastern states are dandy, or so the people say, from New York to St. Louis and Chicago by the way, through the hills of Minnesota where the rippling waters fall, no changes can be taken on the Wabash Cannonball. As she glides along the woodlands, through the hills and by the shore, where the winter wind shakes the snow loose from the big water, where the foam caps freeze to boulders, where even the trees dare not dip their green too low. Here she clacks too between green and gray. Here's to Daddy Claxton, may his name forever stand and always be remembered through the courts of Alabama. His earthly race is o'er, the curtains round him fall, will carry him to glory on his Wabash Cannonball. Hear the mighty rush of her engine, hear that lonesome hobo's call of prayer in response to her steam whistle's blow, rebounding from Twilight Hill to clickety-clack twilight trestle over shadow-cloaked chasm measureless to imagination. She pulled into the station one cold December day. As she rolled up to the platform, you could hear all the people say, "There's a gal from Tennessee. She's long and she is tall. She came down from Birmingham on the Wabash Cannonball." We're traveling through the nighttime on the Wabash Cannonball, asleep or awake or click, clack, bumping beneath and waning moon sliding down the sky, and stars, oh God, spread thick from fore to aft. Oh, listen to the rhythm, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodlands, through the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of her engine, hear that lonesome hobo's call. We're traveling through the nighttime on the Wabash Cannonball. I think that's about it for me.
Well, this is the second part of our program, which is our open mic, and we have 6 people signed up, and the first one is Alex.
Thanks. 5 minutes?
Yep.
Tomorrow is my parents' anniversary, 65 years. So.
Wow.
And today, amongst my crazy shift at work, for an hour, we have them locked in for an hour, so that's when I compose this. And it's just called Beloved, and it speaks for itself. And I cannot match Frank, but this will augment his stuff. A lifetime together, enduring all kinds of pressures. Waking up each morning to your closeness, to a hand that holds mine with a growing affection. For time has only seen us become inseparable. Although you are you and I am me, long ago we found middle ground where we came upon a love, which even to this day has no strings attached, for we are as free as a bird to soar with each breeze. As that is what first brought us near in the heart, as there are forces at work from a nature of benevolence that has us in its sights as two most likely to be joined at the hip, then to remain intact as we glide along, mostly smooth sailing, but encountering also some infrequent friction. Yet all in all, there has been an everlasting, totally consuming, scintillating rhythm that rings in our ears with a reminiscing melody. For no moments are forgotten, they are all cherished treasures. So as I look into your eyes, some tears roll down my face, ones that are in remembrance of my dear beloved. Here goes my Reiki stuff. This can take you on a journey, just like astral traveling. When you're dreaming, you figure you've been somewhere, and then you've actually really been there because you've gone there in a dream and you've actually touched it. Deja vu. Okay. Across a field. As I walked across a field, I could feel joy and sadness from all of those life forms who had passed before me. As each left an imprint, I was like the reflection of a little one with her mother, who were picking flowers while singing nursery rhymes between a flowing breeze that filled them with a sweetness. There was a young boy who had fallen from a tree he was climbing. I could see his father approaching from the distance, moving rather quickly upon hearing the cries of his child, how he brought such comfort with his warming ways. There was a tree that had been struck by lightning during a startling storm. A branch from another extended toward its limb. Between them was an energy exchange as the singed spots were healed. I saw a newborn fawn cuddling up close to its maternal parent, suckling its sustenance, being protected and nurtured under a caring wing, hearing its soft, tiny squeaks travel over a tranquil realm. These images created a collage, a living memory of scenes, a time capsule of remembrances, those which would last for eternity. One more? Okay. Okay. Cerebral inundations. This one, it's like being with empathy, putting yourself in the place of another existence within another creature. And it's been getting stronger within me, communication with animals and things like that. It's just, it's a new gift that's starting to really be realized within my spirit, and this is something about it. Cerebral inundations. I was born squawking inside of this nest. My little eyes were peering, seeing only straw and twigs that were around me. Then there was a giant shadow, loud flapping of these wings. Somehow I felt no danger, just a warmth by their presence. I remember hearing others, 2 more eaglets like myself, who were rather pushy, to say the least, but I managed to get my share. Boy, did I ever devour fish. Salmon was my favorite. My home was like Grand Central Station, with comings and goings. My space seemed to get much smaller, or was it that we grew so quickly? So glad to be where I was, I had a feeling there'd be soon here a day when I'd have to test my appendages. As my feathers were maturing, so were my biological instincts. Yet there was this other side which spoke to me of totems. That this journey was a privilege, an absolute gift, and a proverbial enchantment to learn wisdom of my forefathers, which gave me a chill just thinking about this quest, that here I was front and center on a voyage of discovery. As the day I took to the air, as if this was so natural, so many emotions came breezing through upon these cerebral inundations. Good? Thank you.
Very good. Mary?
Hello, I'm Mary Cooling, and I have not really been writing much lately. I've been really busy with summer weddings and things like that. But I found a couple of, I've been reading, even though I haven't been writing, I've been reading. And because of that, I have a couple of poems I'd like to share. This is actually a book that's called Women's Stories Must Be Told, And frankly, I didn't really enjoy most of the book. It's an anthology, but I really enjoyed this poem, and I want to read it to you. Life's Tune. It's written by Myrtle French. I walked out in the forest as the sun was going down and looked up at the treetops. Each wore a golden crown. They were decked in forest finery, standing straight and tall, listening for music, eager for the ball. And so it is with women. We're anxious for the dance, or for the chance to create the lovely music and take part in the dance. Then I also was reading this other book. It's very interesting. I actually found it here on the giveaway shelf. Bring Me the Ocean, and it's by Rebecca Reynolds. And this is some people that go into schools and bring schools and other institutions where there isn't nature, and they bring the nature in to the people. So this is a beautiful poem that was in this book. The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and awake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And that was Wendell Berry. Then, most of you who know me probably know that I sing, and I love folk songs. And one of my very favorite folk songs is a John Denver folk song called Matthew. I had an uncle named Matthew. He was his father's only boy. He was born just south of Colby, Kansas. He was his mother's pride and joy. Yes, joy was just the thing that he was raised on, and love was just the way to live and die. Gold was just the windy Kansas wheat field. Blue was just the Kansas summer sky. All the stories that he told me back when I was just a lad. All the memories that he gave me, all the good times that we had. Growing up a Kansas farm boy, life was mostly having fun. Riding on his daddy's shoulders, behind a mule beneath the sun. Well, I guess there were some hard times, and I'm told some years were lean. They had a storm in 47, a twister came and it stripped them clean. He lost the farm, he lost his family, he lost the wheat, he lost his home. But he found a family Bible, his faith was solid as a stone. Yes, joy was just the thing that he was raised on. Love was just the way to live and die. Gold was just the windy Kansas wheat field. Blue was just the Kansas summer sky. And so he came to live at our house, and he came to work the land. He came to ease my daddy's burden, and he came to be my friend. And so I wrote this down for Matthew, and it's for him the song is sung. Riding on his daddy's shoulders, behind a mule beneath the sun. Joy was just the thing that he was raised on. Love was just the way to live and die. Gold was just a windy Kansas wheat field. Blue was just the Kansas summer sky.
I've always liked that song. Carla?
Howdy. My name's Carla. I'm from California. I'm in the Coast Guard. I've been here for 2 months in the Sioux. I got stationed here at the sector. And I write a lot of cowboy poetry, and I heard from Frank about this going on. So I said, oh, why not? And the story behind this, I was riding with my cousin, and we were coming back to her house, and I missed a call from the vet. That's weird. Her horse had having some issues. And she called the vet back, and we were driving, And she said, oh, hey, after. Then her face just fell. And I knew something was wrong. Her horse was dying. And so we beat feet back to Sacramento. We emergency vet call, $500. The horse was colicking. Pretty much the horse's guts float in their stomach, and if they get dehydrated, their small intestines can twist around their bladder. Surgery is about $25,000, and there's only a 50-50 chance. And she just couldn't afford to go to college. So we got there, put the horse in the trailer. The horse was like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Horse didn't show any pain. It loved my cousin Linda. So we took her there. They put some saline in the neck. They trotted her. She did fine. Tried the other direction. She was limping. They were like, okay, let's put her in the stall for the night. She went inside, immediately laid down. Very bad sign. So my cousin made the decision. She's in pain. I gotta put her down. And it just broke her heart. And the entire drive back, she was just gushing her heart out, telling me how much she loved this horse. And I'm like, man, what can I do for her? And so when I got on the drive back home, I thought of a poem from the horse's point of view. And I ended up illustrating it into a book for her, but she told me to pursue it and actually get it published. So I'm reading it out of my story that I wrote, but it's pretty much from the horse's point of view, called A Horse's Farewell. To my writer and partner of many years to tell, my time has come a bit too soon, so here's my last farewell. It's barely been a week since our last ride together. It was a day to really cherish, being so close to one another. But lately, I haven't been feeling too well. I'm tired, I stumble, I'm sure you can tell. I feel so exhausted, so weary and weak, yet I always perk up the moment I hear you speak. Every bad tendon at any moment I was in pain. You never failed to be at my side, time and time again. You work so hard, and I try to stay tough. I was amazed to realize that someone loved me that much. It was painful to see you out the bars of that vet stall, with tears in your eyes, beginning to fall. But I ask you not to worry, since no longer do I hurt, and it's fun to go riding on clouds instead of dirt. It was for the best. I know that, and you do too. And I can't wait to see how a pair of wings look on you. I hope it won't be long till we get the chance to ride again. I'll be waiting for you in heaven, my only rider and friend.
That's so beautiful.
Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Merrill Smith. This is a recent poem. I read this last week in Pickford actually, and after feedback I've edited, so we'll see how it goes this week. I really value having to get a chance to read it out loud to get audience reaction. It helps me a lot as a writer. I guess I should say it's been a rough year for me. My mom passed away in April, and I've been kind of battling depression on and off, and so this is probably the darkest poem I've ever written, so just be forewarned. August morning walk. I walk on the highway's shoulder. Grasshoppers jump away from me like burning popcorn. 'Tis the season of the discarded and the dead. Rusty car parts, dissected beer cans, pissed on pregnancy tests, crash-landed dragonflies, squished toads, a hamburger-pattied red-eared slider, head stuck out of his shell in perpetuity. I push these away from asphalt's edge with my foot, but not the skunks, nor the deer who will find quick oblivion courtesy of crows and turkey vultures. House cats bring tears to my eyes. I wonder what has died in my wake. I've left my trail of disappointments, hearts broken and breaking, sighs of relief that I have gone, mangled friendships, mistaken identities. If I could choose again, could I turn the wheel? Would the swerve matter? Maples are turning red in the swamp. Turkeys poke their heads out of the woods, then retreat, molting feathers into the woods. I remember what else I've left behind. Fresh paint, sturdy fences, a skylight. Rosemary fragrant against a cinder block wall. seashells under a Japanese maple, hugs and laughter, honest tears, a kiss on her forehead. Like a hummingbird, I visit flowers many times, tipping my beak into their bells of memory, trusting that a little nectar will always be there. Thanks.
Renee?
First I'm going to read one of mine. It's fairly recent. One of my coworkers, she's about my age, and I guess quite often when we reach that age, we spend a lot of time going to doctors and worrying about our health and all kinds of things that we didn't have to worry about before. And then sometimes, ironically, somebody young who shouldn't have had to worry about all those things dies suddenly with no warning, and her daughter lost her fiance with no warning. And I wrote this poem. It's called Flap. Somewhere a butterfly flaps its wings and another man done gone. Not unusual. There's one or a few in the paper every day. Just one more whose heart gave out too soon. But this one sticks with you. This one you can't easily forget. This one was young. Way too young for a thing like that. He makes you think of the risks you take and get away with, and all the stupid things you've done. So you keep looking over your shoulder, trying to catch a glimpse of that grim reaper following you. And you think that maybe just one more time you've fooled him, one more time you've won. But that one loves the darkness, and that one keeps the shadows. That one's got your number, and that one knows your name. And maybe he'll give you a warning, or maybe only a flap of a butterfly's wing. The second poem I wanted to read is by Ken Waldman, who he visited LSSU probably about 8 years ago. And it's about September 11th, and I wanted to read it since we just had that anniversary, but I want to say I love this poem because it is not about death and tragedy. This is a poem that exhorts us to live, and that's what I wanted to leave you with tonight. This is no poem about planes hijacked and flown into New York City buildings, cameras catching the surreal, endless snippets, some edited, some not, of towers on fire a while, then suddenly collapsing. The heap a mix of concrete, dark smoke, bodies, ash, everywhere the rubble, and that ignores a third plane hijacked and flown into the Pentagon, a fourth plowing into a Pennsylvania field, the thousands dead. That's the poem Television writes. Underneath is another, strange world of good and evil, love and hate, great anger, and even greater faith. Nothing ever changes, but everything has. We'll need friends, family, music, and a language that transcends. Thank you.
And our last reader today is Jim Cooling.
I thought in light of the creativeness that I started again to read this classic Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. And I thought, there's a thought that a man named Doherty wrote a book called Ireland, and in it he said that poems and stories write themselves. And so in opening this book, I thought I'd just read just a page or two of his creative thought. This book, like most of my books and stories, was a surprise. I began to learn the nature of such surprises, thank God, when I was fairly young as a writer. Before that, like every beginner, I thought you could beat, pummel, and thrash an idea into existence. Under such treatment, of course, any decent idea folds its paws, turns on its back, fixes its eyes on eternity, and dies. It was with great relief then in my early 20s I floundered into a word association process in which I simply got out of bed each morning, walked to my desk, put down any word or series of words that happened along in my head. I would then take arms against the word or for it and bring on an assortment of characters to weigh the word and show me its meaning in its own life. An hour or two later, to my amazement, a new story would be finished and done. The surprise was total and lovely. I soon found out I'd have to work this way for the rest of my life. First, I rummaged my mind for words that could describe my personal nightmares, fears of night and time from my childhood, and shaped stories from these. Then I took a long look at a green apple tree in the old house I was born in, and the house next door where I lived with my grandparents, and all the lawns of summer I grew up in, and I began to try words for that. What you have here in this book, then, is a gathering of dandelions from all those years. The wine metaphor, which appears again and again in these pages, is wonderfully apt. I was gathering images all my life, storing them away and forgetting them. Somehow I had to send myself back with words as catalysts to open the memories out and see what they had to offer. So from the age of 24 to 36, hardly a day passed, but I didn't stroll myself along a recollection of my grandfather's northern Illinois grass, hoping to come across some old burnt firecracker, a rusted toy, or a fragment of letter written to myself in some younger year, hoping to contact the older person I had become, to remind him of his past life, his people, his joys, and his drenching sorrows. It became a game that I took up with immense gusto to see how much I could remember about dandelions, or picking wild grapes with my father and brother, rediscovering the mosquito breeding ground rain barrel by the side bay window, or searching out the smell of gold-fuzzed bees that hung around our back porch grape arbor. Bees do have a smell, you know, and if they don't, they should, for their feet are dusted with spices from a million flowers. And then I wanted to call back what the ravine was like, especially on the nights when walking home late across town after seeing Lon Chaney's delicious fright, The Phantom of the Opera. My brother Skip would run ahead and hide under the Ravine Creek Bridge like the lonely one and leap out and grab me shrieking. So I ran and fell and ran again, gibbering all the way home. That was great stuff. And along the way I came upon and collided with word association, old and true friendships. I borrowed my friend John Huff from my childhood in Arizona and shipped him east to Greentown so I could say goodbye to him properly. And along the way, I sat down to breakfast, lunches, and dinners with the long dead and much loved, for I was a boy who did indeed love his parents and grandparents and his brothers, even when that brother ditched me. Along the way, I found myself in the basement working the wine press for my father, or the front porch Independence Night, helping my Uncle Byron load and fire his homemade brass cannon. Thus, I fell into surprise. No one told me to surprise myself, I might add. I came on the old and best ways of writing through ignorance and experience, and was startled when truths leaped out of bushes like quail before a gunshot. I blundered into creativity as blindly as any child learning to walk, and so I learned to let my senses and my past tell me all that was somehow true. So I turned myself into a boy running to bring a dipper of clear rainwater out of that barrel by the side of the house, and of course, the more water you dip out, the more flows in. And the flow never ceased. Once I learned to keep going back and back again to those times, I had plenty of memories and sense impressions to play with, not work with, to play with. Dandelion wine is nothing if it is not the boy hid in the man, playing in the fields of the Lord of the grass, of other Augusts, in the midst of starting to grow up, grow old, sense darkness, and waiting underneath the trees. I was amused and somehow astonished at a critic a few years ago who wrote an article analyzing dandelion wine, plus the more realistic works of Sinclair Lewis, wondering how I could have been born and raised in Waukegan, which I named Greentown for my novel, and not noticed how ugly the harbor was, and how depressing the coal docks and railroads were below town. But of course, I noticed them. Generic enchanter that I was, fascinated by their beauty, trains and boxcars, and the smell of coal and fire are not ugly to children. Ugliness is a concept we happen on later and become self-conscious about. Counting boxcars is a prime activity for boys. Their elders fret and fume and jeer at the train that holds them up. Boys happily count and cry the name of the cars as they pass by from far places. And again, that supposedly ugly rail yard was where carnivals and circuses arrived with elephants who washed the brick pavements with mighty steam acid waters at 5 in the dark morning. As for the coal from the docks, I went down to my basement every autumn to await the arrival of the truck and its metal chute, which clanged down and released a ton of beauteous meteors that fell out of far space into my cellar and threatened to bury me beneath dark treasures. In other words, if your boy is a poet, horse manure can only mean flowers to him, which is, of course, what horse manure has always been about.
I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks to all our readers, and especially Frank for your wonderful poetry today. And remember, look in January for the next Poetry Cafe, which we don't have the date set for yet, but we'll have it soon. So thank you all very much. Good night.